I want to talk about why my guy Bryce Young is going to take the Panthers to the playoffs. And I know I came out a couple of weeks ago and I made a video talking about how small the guy looked and how he looked like a damn fifth grader at the Carolina Panthers rookie minicamp. But a lot of you guys kind of forgot that he was my number one ranked quarterback, and I was hyping this dude up for the whole entire draft process. And if you go back and you look at what Bryce Young did last season at Alabama, he carried that Alabama squad. That wasn't the Alabama squad that you're normally accustomed to seeing with tons of first-round talent at wide receiver and great offensive line play. Like, even Nick Saban would tell you right now that Bryce Young was the sole reason why Alabama's season didn't go off the rails. Because if Alabama didn't have Bryce Young last year, they probably would have had 3 or 4 losses. Heck, look at what Alabama is doing right now. Did you not see their spring game? Their quarterback play was not that great. And it was to the point where Nick Saban had to go into the transfer portal to get another quarterback. So that tells you about how big of an impact that Bryce Young had on Alabama. If you can carry Alabama and the SEC, the toughest conference in college football, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to succeed in the NFL. There's a lot of people talking about I got to wait to see him play a game. Like, come on, bro. Like, why do y'all act like this? Some players you can just look at and tell they're just him. When Joe Burrow came out of LSU, you knew he was going to be that guy. Certain players you can just look at and tell they're going to be him, unless they just go to a terrible organization and get held back by awful coaching. But that's not the situation that Bryce Young is walking into. Frank Wright is one of the better quarterback coaches in this league. Yeah, I know last year at Indianapolis when he got fired, it didn't work out with Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger. But prior to that, the quarterbacks that he's had have all had pretty efficient seasons under him. Like Carson Wentz, even though the coach traded him after the year, had his most efficient season of his career under Frank Wright. Same thing when he had to start Jacoby Brissett the year when Andrew Luck retired in the preseason. Phillip Rivers had a really efficient season under Frank Wright. And you already know that Phillip Rivers throughout the majority of his career was known as being a turnover machine. But under Frank Wright, he was playing at a pretty efficient level. Bryce Young went to probably the best landing spot possible for him to have a successful NFL career. And going into his rookie season, I'm expecting big things out of Bryce Young. It was a Carolina Panther fan that tried to tell me, man, you expecting too much out of Bryce Young. It's just his first season. Like, what? You telling me I can't expect the number 1 overall pick to lead the Carolina Panthers to the damn playoffs in one of the weakest divisions in the NFL? The Panthers went 7-10 last year with Baker Mayfield, who they released during the early part of the season, PJ Walker, and Sam freaking Darnold, and the freaking interim head coach and Steve Wilkes. And they nearly won the division. So if they can go 7-10, having multiple different quarterbacks starting with the interim head coach, how is it crazy to believe that Bryce Young can get the Panthers back to the postseason this year? And it has been a long time since we last saw the Carolina Panthers in the postseason. But a large reason for that was because, 1, they whiffed on hiring Matt Rule as their head coach, and 2, they haven't really had stability at the quarterback position. Bryce Young now has stabilized the most important position in the NFL. And you now have a head coach who isn't learning on the job. This isn't his first go around in the NFL. Like, Frank Wright was a pretty solid head coach during his time at Indianapolis. Now, was bruh a top 5 or top 10 coach? No, he wasn't. But he did a pretty good job during his time with the Colts, considering the fact that they were playing musical chairs at the quarterback position nearly every year. They had a new quarterback almost every single season after Andrew Luck retired. Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. I mean, come on. I'm glad that Frank Wright and the Carolina Panthers organization took it upon themselves to say, you know what? We're not even going to allow you to do what you did in Indianapolis, bringing in all these different quarterbacks. We're going to go ahead, trade up for Bryce Young, and we're going to give you some stability at QB. And this is a really talented team. This is probably the most talented team in this division behind the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints have a really talented roster, but I don't really trust Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen hasn't really proven me anything. He has a good team, but he hasn't proven to be a solid coach, capable of being able to get a team to the postseason. They mismanaged their quarterback situation. Many Saints fans will tell you that Jameis Winston should have been starting all of last year when he was healthy. But instead, they went with Andy Dalton. You got the Atlanta Falcons, who do show a lot of promise, but do you really believe in Desmond Ridder? If you're a Falcons fan listening to this right now, who would you rather have, Bryce Young or Desmond Ridder? And don't give me that crap, man, Bryce Young ain't play a single NFL game. You don't know if he's going to be better than Desmond Ridder. Bruh, what the hell has Desmond Ridder showed you to give you any hope that this guy is going to end up being able to get you to the postseason? Because Desmond Ridder did not look that good last season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're really going to put your faith in Todd Bowles? This is the same person who folded a multiple possession lead against the Cincinnati Bengals. This dude went for a fake punt on his own side of the field and it failed. You're really going to put your faith in Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield? Like, the Carolina Panthers right now are probably the safest team if you're somebody who bets money on preseason over-under win totals or who's going to end up making it to the playoffs. The Panthers are probably the safest bet to make it to the postseason and to win this division. You got a pretty solid head coach. I probably would say that this is the best head coach in the division. He's the only head coach in this division that actually has been able to lead a team to the playoffs. Not just that, but you look at the offensive line. This offensive line was really good last season. They were 9th in the NFL in sacks per game allowed, and they were one of the best run blocking units in the whole entire National Football League. They got plenty talent and depth at wide receiver. Yeah, you had to trade DJ Moore, and, you know, there were a lot of tears that were shed amongst Panther fans, but you were able to bring in Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall. Did we forget about him? Terrace Marshall has a lot of potential, and I think he's going to end up having a breakout season this year. You got Laviska Shenault. You got rookie out of Ole Miss, Jonathan Mingo, who Steve Smith was really high on. Your tight end position is pretty good. Hayden Hurst, Ian Thomas. You got running back Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. And you already know that this defense is going to be top-notch with Coach E at the helm at defensive coordinator. Did you not see the Denver Broncos defense last year? The Denver Broncos defense with Coach E as the defensive coordinator was the only thing good about watching the Broncos last year. And even then, his defense didn't get too many breaks because the offense couldn't sustain drives. And every time the defense got to stop, and every time they got done hitting a sip of that Gatorade, 30 seconds later, they were right back on the field. The Carolina Panthers, man, like, there's no reason why this team should not make it to the playoffs last year. I know that I predicted Carolina to make it to the postseason last year, but I didn't know that Matt Rule was just going to completely be a whiff of a head coach and that Baker Mayfield was just going to be crappy. This team should be a playoff team this year. Like, I would be incredibly surprised if Carolina does not make it to the postseason this year. Like, Frank Wright is the best head coach in this division. He does a really good job getting the most out of his quarterback. And plus, this is the best coaching staff in this division also. He has a really good staff in place to make sure that Bryce Young is able to play at a really high level this year. And I think that Bryce Young is one of the best quarterback prospects to come out in this past decade. Now, I don't think he's better than Trevor Lawrence, but I definitely think he's up there. Same thing with CJ Stroud. The Carolina Panthers, man, with Bryce Young at the helm at QB, as long as he can stay healthy, this team, I expect them to make it to the playoffs as long as he stays healthy. And that's really my only concern about Bryce Young. This guy, despite being undersized and looking like a preschooler, this guy has incredible pocket awareness. He throws with great anticipation, timing, accuracy. And even though he's small, he's not the easiest to bring down. This guy kind of is like Houdini. There were a lot of times last season when it looked like Bryce Young was going to get swallowed behind the line of scrimmage. He'll end up breaking out of a sack and making some crazy shit happen. And most of Alabama's losses last season came when Bryce Young wasn't on the field. Did you watch when they lost to LSU? They lost to LSU off a 2-point conversion. Bryce Young wasn't on the field. Did you remember when Texas took Alabama to the wire and surprised us all? Who saved Alabama in that game? It was Bryce Young. Come on, man. Like, the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young, I don't care if you're a Falcons fan, a Saints fan, a Buccaneers fan. There's no way you can tell me you watched Alabama play last season and you were not impressed with Bryce Young. Like, some of y'all kind of blowing me talking about man, I got to see, man. Like, the NFL is a different ball. Like, come on, man. Like, this dude is a phenomenal quarterback. This dude is one of the best quarterback prospects that ever come out in recent memory. This dude is a generational player. Like, yes, he's undersized, but he walks on wood. I remember I was listening to a Colin Cowherd segment when he had Sean Payton on. And Sean Payton and him were discussing who possibly could be taken #1 overall. And Sean Payton normally said when you're evaluating the quarterback position, you normally want to draft somebody who fits the positional prototype, which is probably like 6'2", 6'3", 215. But sometimes when you have a quarterback who, quote, quote, in Sean Payton's words, walks on water, even though he may not fit that prototypical build, since he walks on water, he can overcome that. And that's Bryce Young. And this team is really good. He's going to have a top 10 defense with Coach E at the helm as defensive coordinator. This is somebody who is getting interviews to be a potential head coach, despite the fact that the Broncos were the biggest disappointment in the NFL last year. That should tell you everything you need to know about how good the Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator is. Now, I'm probably never going to be able to pronounce dude's name just because I'm not really that good with word pronunciation, and plus he has a little bit of a difficult name to pronounce. That's why I just call him Coach E. But this defense is going to be outstanding, and the defense played at a really high level last year under Steve Wilkes. And this was without their second best player on that side of the ball, and J.C. Horn, who missed significant time due to injury. The Carolina Panthers, with Bryce Young at the helm at QB, I believe they're going to be a playoff team. Now, will they win the division? Shoot, I think they will. But even if they don't win the division, let's say somebody surprises us like the Saints or the Falcons do, I still expect the Carolina Panthers to be in the playoffs. There's no reason why this team shouldn't make it to the postseason. They went 7-10 last year, despite firing Matt Rule. Steve Wilkes comes in, rejuvenates this team, almost puts this team in a situation to win this division. So with Frank Wright, who's a better head coach than what the Carolina Panthers had, and Matt Rule, who actually knows offense, who actually knows how to develop a quarterback, who knows how to get efficient quarterback play, I expect Carolina to be in the postseason. I don't get how some people out there really think this is going to be the worst team in this division. Some of you guys act like Frank Wright is one of the most terrible coaches in the NFL. Like, if you go and you look back at Frank Wright's track record, this guy is phenomenal at getting efficient quarterback play. You can hate on him for what he did with Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger, but throw the 2022 season in the trash and go back and look at what he did previously. This guy gets the most out of all of his quarterbacks, and him getting Bryce Young is going to put Carolina in a situation to make it to the postseason. They haven't had a franchise QB since Cam Newton. They're still trying to find his replacement, and they have it now in Bryce Young. I expect the Panthers, as long as Bryce Young stays healthy, to make it to the postseason.